Hi, it's the Our Town program. It's on 94.9 and 99.1 The River. It's brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust, and it comes to you each and every week at this particular time. My name is Darren Swinson, the host of the program. A little later on in the program, we'll talk the latest on the elementary school project in Decorah with Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. But our first guest this morning is Decorah High School Principal Brad Hurst, coming up on November 11th. The Decorah High School will be hosting a Veterans Day program, and there's an opportunity for you to participate in a wall of veterans that will be displayed that day. And the deadline is coming up soon to add your active duty military or veteran picture to that wall. And that's the reason we're having Brad on the show this week. Brad will get things going on Our Town, brought to you by Decorah Bank and Trust next. Having a conversation right now with Brad Hurst. He is the Decorah High School principal, and coming up on November 11th, the annual Veterans Day breakfast and program will take place at Decorah High School. And there's some things that the public wishing to be a part of this can do so before that November 11th date. And Brad, first of all, I know this program was started by your predecessor, Kim Shepard. It's been going for quite some time at Decorah High School. What's the reason? What's the purpose of having this program on a year in, year out basis?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it just comes down to reminding our veterans and their families and everybody that's made those sacrifices to support our freedoms that their service is remembered and it's appreciated, and that we want to make sure that it doesn't seem as something that happened in the past. We also try to honor those that are currently still in service, and those that are serving our country actively right now as well. And so we want to make sure that just continue to remind on the day that it's not just a day, but the living reminders of that service are preserved and remembered every year.
How important is it to tell the students the stories of these veterans and their service?
I think it's utterly important. They do learn about various conflicts and wars and some of those things that have happened throughout history. Our social studies teachers do a great job talking about the implications, the freedoms that were protected, the purposes of those conflicts, the things that they were trying to fight for. But I think it's entirely different when it's right in front of you. I don't know of any more somber moments I've had in education than when I have members of our VFW or local veterans that post the colors at every sporting event. And you just constantly feel and try to imagine what that might have been like for them. But of course, you'll never necessarily know for sure unless you've served. But I think just hearing those stories and seeing those living examples has a much more profound impact than kind of just hearing about it. And I want to make sure that that's also noticed and remembered as well.
As for the ceremony itself and the program itself on Tuesday, November 11th, run down the schedule for that day for the breakfast and the program.
Yeah. So we actually have, thankfully to Mrs. Fullhart and Mr. Elliott and our nutrition staff and many of our students in our culinary arts program, they prepare breakfast for our veterans. It actually starts with 7:30 in the morning. They have coffee, and the invitation is extended to the veterans and their families to come in, and many of them will be here right at 7:30 for the coffee. It'll be in our high school cafeteria. And then at 8:30, we start to serve breakfast. The menu is very good. I mean, good, tasty breakfast, some kind of an egg souffle, as well as some other toasts and just rolls and things like that. And definitely they take it seriously. They do a lot to serve and, get around and support. It's our hospitality class that takes part in that. So they've spent some time preparing the menu, and of course, they'll spend lots of time that morning actually making the food and getting everything ready to go.
And
From there, sorry, I discuss on the breakfast, but actually in the breakfast, what'll be kind of cool is, no, no, we'll maybe talk about this later. In the cafeteria, there'll be a wall of veterans, and so basically, we have many of the pictures from previous years that have been submitted. we will still have. But if there's any new pictures or updated pictures or new service members from the community, they can also submit those. And what will happen is we have display boards that will be put up all around the cafeteria. So then during the breakfast, when they're with their families, people can circulate around and look at those photos. Actually, something kind of cool this year that's new that I just kind of heard about a few weeks ago is a local veteran has worked with Mr. Waskow, one of our industrial technology teachers, to create kind of this rolling cart. And then on that cart, there's going to be this giant map of Vietnam that he's had framed in glass, and has just various conflicts and some of those things. And, of course, many of our veterans in the community would be Vietnam veterans, and it provides kind of this living conversation point, I suppose, of like, oh, I served there, I served there. I remember talking with him briefly about, my dad's service in Vietnam and different places. And so I think that'll be a natural conversation point that will come from that. People can actually talk about different things that they were engaged in a different way, just to have that visual map as a representation to kind of connect people.
And let's touch on the wall of veterans coming up.
Yes.
You mentioned you have some photos from years past. If people want to add on to that wall and add pictures, how do they do so, and what is the deadline to do so?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. So Denise Goldroot is our administrative assistant in the office, and she's had several people already stop in. There's lots of ways you can do it. We do ask for various 5x7 photos or photos of that size. And that's just so that we can get as many photos as possible that we can display. So some people will, have like just original copies of photos that we can make copies of. Some will have digital versions of those that they've emailed her throughout the weeks leading up to this. You can also call or stop in. It's pretty flexible. Her email address is denise.goldroot@decorah.school, or you can also call and set up a time to come in and drop some stuff off. Our phone number is 563-382-3643. And the
And
deadline to do that is next Friday, October 31st.
all right, we'll keep that in mind. Let's go back to the program itself on November 11th. We talked about the breakfast and
Yes.
the coffee early in the day. As for the program itself, what will that all consist of?
Yeah, thank you. I kind of got caught midstream. That I'm so excited about just the breakfast and the wall stuff. But yeah, so eventually, what will happen is around 9:30 or so, we'll have student or families and veterans that are in the auditorium that would like to go ahead and file into our or in the cafeteria. Sorry, to go ahead and file into the auditorium. We'll have kind of reserved seating for them to sit. We'll have ushers and other people there as well to help anybody that may need some assistance getting sat down. And then from there, the ceremony or the program is got a lot of different components. There's ceremony components, there's music, there's reflection, and there's lots of student involvement. We're going to open, like I said earlier, with the VFW posting the colors. I think that moment always just kind of creates a tone for the rest of the program. Everybody will rise to the national anthem that will be performed by the Decorah High School Wind Ensemble. From there, we'll have a welcome by our students. Throughout the program, we'll have our concert choir and wind ensemble perform various musical pieces. Would include America the Beautiful, God Bless America, and the Armed Forces Salute will be played by our band, where veterans from each branch are recognized and stand as the anthem is played. Obviously, that's an emotional highlight because it does recognize all the different services. And then from there, what actually is kind of happening, we kind of rotate what we do a little bit each year based on what's available. This year, Mr. Riley, our AD, is working with Mrs. Hocklesvik to create a video. And basically, the video will be basically interviewing deployed Iowa National Guard members around the world that are on tour, and just getting their perspectives and reminding ourselves that the service is ongoing and continuing, and not something just confined to history. So basically, I think will help our students understand the services and sacrifices that are still being made by our active duty military members and their families, and by extension, obviously, our veterans that have already served and the prices that they've paid to protect our freedoms. We'll close the program with a moment of silence, and then we'll have the performance of taps. And then that just kind of builds the gravity of the room. At that point, we'll kind of retire the colors. Veterans and their families will be dismissed from the auditorium first, and then we'll dismiss our students from there.
And in years past, the students that are involved in helping organize this event, what have they gotten out of this?
I think a lot. I think it's one thing, like I said earlier, to talk about it, but just I think, we've had speakers that have come in. I still remember my first year, we had a speaker that talked about a rock, and that was the only rock that he had in his collection that was, not labeled. And it was a rock that represented somebody that was basically on a flight to go. It was his last flight before he was going to be off duty. And, they somehow came into some circumstances that resulted in him having to be basically like he was still active and still fighting and all those things. And he fought to the very last against all adversity and odds. And that sense of duty and responsibility. We've had some different speakers like that over the years. And then also, I think we've had some videos and some things that we've done too. I think it really does. Our students are very respectful and good just in general, but I think it really does help them appreciate those that sacrifice more to protect the freedoms and really appreciate some of the things maybe they take for granted. That somebody had to fight or protect those things, that they're not just guaranteed in perpetuity, and that those fights and protections continue to this day.
And I think we all are take it for granted from time to time as well. One more question regarding the Wall of Veterans. Do you want active duty military and veterans for that wall? Just to clarify.
Yeah, I think we would take anybody right now that's
Okay.
currently serving or has served in a conflict, just to kind of make it a living thing. And so if people have current service members that are deployed overseas, we would encourage them to submit information, and we can put it up on our wall as well.
Anything we're missing? Anything else you want to pass on about this event, Brad?
No, I think it's just, it's definitely a team effort. We do have lots of people. I'm very thankful for the opportunity to do it. I'm thankful for our social studies teachers that have worked to select the students that will serve as ushers, that will kind of help throughout the event, our culinary staff. I'm thankful to Mr. Riley and Mrs. Golrud for all that they're doing to get the wall organized. I just think it's definitely a lot. This is, the only school I've been in. I've been in a couple different schools that's taken a Veterans Day program and, made it to this level of appreciation and recognition. And I think that's just worth noting. There's a lot of veterans, I think, that have, over the last few years I've been here, appreciated what we do to kind of honor their service, and families that have been very thankful for it. For me personally, of course, just the component of my father serving in the Army and being a Vietnam veteran, and just all the things that have come from that. I've even had some good conversations with some people that have stopped in that served in Vietnam, and just it kind of helps me. Like, my dad didn't always want to talk a lot about his service, but it kind of helps me just hearing from other people to get a better sense of what that experience might have been like. And it really is a community of people. And I do appreciate our veterans and how active they are in our community, and all the things they do to keep and support other veterans. The other thing I've just noticed is how much they're, even willing to kind of help me, like, get more information about his service and some of those things that, there really is I think some pride in some of that, and just really a sense of like wanting people to understand and work together to support each other. So I've appreciated that immensely, just to kind of even have a better sense of what my own father, might have been through in the Vietnam conflict.
All right, Brad, we appreciate you taking a few minutes to tell us about the Veterans Day program coming up on November 11th. Get your active duty and veteran photos to the high school by October 31st. Brad, thank you for the time. Thank you and everyone at Decorah High School for saying thank you to veterans. It's something we don't do enough.
Yeah, thank you, Darren. I appreciate it.
Brad Hurst, principal at Decorah High School. Having a conversation this morning with Decorah School Superintendent Tim Cronin. Earlier this week, the school board held a special meeting on Tuesday night to update folks and give them the latest regarding the elementary school project. As we talk here on October 22nd, Tim, where are we at with everything?
Well, so last night we had our architect, Nick Hildebrand, kind of walk the board, kind of a comprehensive look at the whole where we're at with we finished the design development and now we're really going to the architectural drawings and walk through the board with everything that, the last 6 months of planning. And then we also had the 3D walkthrough. I know we had just kind of done a smaller version of this with city council um, about a week and a half ago, and then that raised some questions from the city council regarding fence height, green space, and parking. And so we kind of, as a school board, looked at that among other things.
And regarding those concerns that were brought up by the city council, is there anything at this point that you want to address directly regarding those concerns?
Sure. I would say one of the first things was the height of the fence that would go around the playground. We're pretty, having a fence around our playground's pretty important to us for two reasons. It helps define a boundary for the children. Um, Whether they're playing with the ball and it goes into the street, most of them are really good about stopping and not running after it. In fact, I was just at John Klein the other day and a ball rolled out toward my car and I was walking to my car and someone was turning into the parking lot and the first grader kind of stopped and I was like, hey, I'll get your ball for you. But that doesn't always happen. So having a fence just to kind of keep balls in is a good idea. Occasionally we get students that run, not a lot, but they do run, and it's nice to have a little barrier there. And then during the school day, especially, we want to have kind of a barrier to not have folks intermingling on our playgrounds and stuff because we want it to be safe. So, uh, but the fence was originally 8 feet tall, and so that would require a variance from the city because any fence over 4 feet requires a variance. So we did change those plans, and we're just going to go to a 4 foot fence, so no variance is required. We will still have, I think, a 10 foot fence around the tennis courts, but that's part of a safety, so you don't have to ask for a variance on that. The variances we're asking for with the plan are the location of a parking lot close to the street and a building like on the playground right by the tennis courts. So a dual purpose building, kind of like we have now by the tennis courts, but it'll be used for playground. It would have bathrooms and water and storage. And so we can that'd be a nice feature to have during recess, store some trikes in there, have an outdoor bathroom so students didn't have to go inside. And then, of course, dual purpose as our tennis courts, during the day, they would be like basketball courts and four square courts. And then, after school, they're used for tennis. And then we'd have bathrooms right there. And so that building needs a variance as well. With regards to some other concerns, one of the things the city council wanted or mentioned was a pass through, like an ability to walk by the school to the high school. I'm not sure how that will work or fit into the goals of an elementary school. Any school in general, you don't necessarily have a walking path go right by the building that you're directing, public to use. We kind of want it during the school hours be a controlled environment. So um, that and we're looking at green space right now. There's there is green space. There's probably, the big thing is with the school district getting the western portion of the land, we can kind of convert the 24-hour lot from gravel and an area where the recycling containers are stored to green playground space. And so one of the questions we talked about last night was, um, grass or turf, and does it matter? And, if it's important to have green space for Nordic Fest events, I know one of them is the rock throw. Well, we don't want to have a little turfed area and throwing rocks on that. So there's probably just some, I think Carol Sand mentioned maybe some small wrinkles that we could still work on, but any kind of substantive changes to the building plan would potentially put us back 3 to 4 months or maybe a year. So we're going to try to avoid those for sure.
And related to the issue of parking, the way I understand this new plan that does add a decent amount of additional spots in that area. In your mind, why were those extra parking spots needed? Not only for the school day itself, perhaps for activities. Why were those extra spots needed?
Yeah, so one of the it started out with let's have a parking lot that can also be used as a larger drop-off zone.
Okay.
So we kind of carved out a larger area, so cars can pull in and drop children off. Um, Obviously, you want to do that in the safest manner. You don't want to, have children crossing in front of cars. Um, right now, it's a pretty small parking lot. So by taking the existing parking lot and making it bigger, we just created a longer area for a larger space to queue up the cars. And then hopefully that'll get some off of Claiborne.
Mhm.
Um, the other part that we did was by putting a parking lot and bus drop off in back on the south side. Then you get your parent drivers and your buses. You separate them, and so then that's more efficient for the bus drivers because they need to drop children off and get to the next spot. But of course, then that also makes it safer and a quicker process. Um, so those were the two starting points on that conversation. But then doing the research on the number of staff that we have in the building, I think we decided we've got about 61 to 65 staff in that building, and currently, I gotta get this right. The current John Klein parking lot is 15 spaces, two handicap spots, and then five non-conforming parking spots. If you ever go by, what they do is they just park along, kind of like a parallel park, right
Mhm.
when you're getting out onto State Street. So those really aren't parking spots, but we've just used those forever because we need places for staff to park. So if you've got 20 staff parking spots and 61 staff, obviously staff are currently parking on State Street and in the bank parking. And so, potentially that's about 40 spots. Then in addition, the whole point of building the elementary large enough to include our preschool classes, that moves the West Side students over to the main elementary primary campus at the new John Klein. So that takes the number. We think, when we say in 61 to 65, we feel like it'll be 75 staff and maybe even a little higher than that. So trying to have 75 parking spots for your staff was then when we looked at the parking lot, well, let's make sure we can cover that. The city code indicated you have to have additional parking spots. I don't know how it's worded in the city code, but it was like you have to meet the needs of the building plus about 15. So then we were up to about 90, um, which is a little bit of an underestimate because we feel like we might have more staff.
Mhm.
But I think parking spot wise, there's 92 in front and 15 in back. So we do have a little bit more parking than others. And so that's just school day parking. And then at night, then that parking would be available for use for activities um, in the school and or parking right by the tennis courts, activities inside the new John Klein, activities at the high school. So it got debated last night where people park currently for stuff, and like a Friday night, we'll be there early actually because I'll be doing pancakes for the Lions. So shameless plug for to come out early. It's Lions Pancake Supper.
5
It's
p.m.
awesome.
start, right?
5 p.m. start. I show up at 4, so
Okay.
I bet you could get a pancake by about 4:30 on Friday.
All
Uh,
right.
but yeah, we've had nights where we didn't have something going on, and we've parked in the North Alley parking just because if you've ever been around on a Friday night and tried to park for football games, sometimes you can luck out, but lots of times you're parking and walking away. So and other events, uh, we're parking on the street. We've never broken it into maybe the flat, but I know we just had the Harvest Moon dinner and we parked kind of over by the greenhouse. So, you know, a lot of people come to our events, which is awesome, but a lot of people drive and come to our events, which makes parking difficult.
I know one of the concepts way back when the city was kind of studying this entire area prior to the sale of this land to the school district, included at that time the closure of Claiborne Drive. Why did the school district decide that that wasn't going to be a good idea?
So that was part of the Bolton and Mink study that was jointly commissioned by the school district and the city council. And that was kind of the impetus for, hey, one of the findings was a downtown school is important to this community. That was one of the impetus for the land sale to the school and the purchase. There was a drawing. The final preferred concept was um, a school, and it wasn't the school that was designed wasn't like wasn't based on what needs were. It was just a geometric figure drop down, and then there was a walk sidewalk, kind of walk path on the eastern side of the school, and then Claiborne was closed in that drawing. We heard immediately, you're going to close Claiborne, and I tried to explain to people that's kind of outside of what the school's allowed to do. Um, and so, it's not our intent to close Claiborne, even if we wanted to, but we're not able to. Would it make that area different? Oh, absolutely. Would there be a lot more green space? Sure. But that would have to have been a city council decision, not a Decorah school board. Now, I guess in fairness, we didn't go to them and say, "Hey, why don't you close Claiborne for us so we can build this new school?" Because we had gotten enough. Well, it wasn't part of our plans, and we had gotten enough negative feedback on closing Claiborne that we didn't want to pursue that, and we assumed that the city council had as well.
And related to the permissions that this new building will need from the city to move forward, what is the schedule of those items going before city boards and commissions?
So we have our site plan, and it's going to I think it's the Board of Adjustment. The
Site
first Wednesday.
plan would be planning and zoning, right?
What's that?
Site plan would be planning and zoning, and the variances would be Board of Adjustment, correct?
Okay, so the variances are going to the Board of Adjustments, and that's November 5th at 5:15. Site plan goes to planning and zoning on November 10th at 5:30, and then city council on November 17th at 5:45.
All right. And if there are any roadblocks, concerns, any slowdowns of this process, what could potentially happen to maybe perhaps delay the opening of this building in 2027?
We addressed that a little bit last night. Depending on how big the changes might be, I think anywhere it could be delayed for anywhere from a couple of months to a year, and it may not take a year to get all the plans redone. But then when you just look at the schedule for bids and construction, you can only do those at certain times. There's certain optimal times to go out for bids. Obviously, you don't do construction in the winter. So we want to keep this on time so that we can open in the fall of 2027. Any kind of substantial change, it's just hard to know how substantial you're talking about. A complete redraw of the building, I think, would take a minimum of 6 months and would put us at an opening of the school in 2028. Maybe some minor tweaks might be only a month, but until any changes like that, I just, without knowing what they are, it's hard to speculate. But for sure, it doesn't get pushed back just 1 month equals 1 month later on the project because of some of those construction windows and bid windows, um, and and making a change isn't as easy as just erasing a line on a drawing. There's HVAC systems and electrical systems, and things need to be reworked, and the amount of retainage you have for water is related to the amount of cement you have. So yeah, everything's related.
So it's not like drawing pictures as a kid. If we don't like our original drawing, we just start a new one.
Yeah, it's a little bit more complicated than that. It's yeah. So it's hard to speculate. I know that question kind of got asked of Nick, the architect, and you know it's probably one of those, it all depends on what you're really talking about with changes. And even then, it might be hard to say, oh, you want to have it go higher, more floors or something, and less horizontal or something. It would be hard to say. And of course, we do have a partial second floor on this, but with the building being, one of the variables is it's a pre-K through 2, and we really don't have much desire to have any children older than second, just as second graders would be on second floor. So we are limited a little bit that way, where we can't do maybe, the middle school, which is 3 floors and doesn't take up, isn't as much of a horizontal space. This can't, and that's vertical. We just can't do that in this space.
And I know one of the things that was brought up in an open letter to the school board that was signed by 3 city council members is the addition of the competition gym to this building. Again, remind folks why the school district and the school board decided to move forward with that competition gym.
Well, so the in the initial plans, we had when we went out for the referendum, we had a 10,000 square foot gym, kind of what I would say decent sized middle school gym. Um, and as we started looking at plans, one of the questions was, could we make that gym a little bit bigger? On the when we were talking about it, I know I use competition gym a lot, but a real competition gym that would have bleachers on both sides, um, and large enough space, and so then that drew in adding a couple more locker rooms and a concession stand area, but also capitalizing on some of the shared use spaces, is what the opportunity was. If you just did a separate unit, you're going to have to do the kind of the commons area separately. You have to do the concessions area. So what we were trying to do was capitalize on an existing plan and expand from 10,000 square feet to 13,000 square feet. Um, we did that, got that costed out at $3 million in an addition, um, and approved that. I couldn't tell you exactly what board meeting we did. We had a few discussions about it. It was last winter. We have reduced some of the costs on that. So the last number I saw is maybe it's a $2 million addition. But with the idea being that having a larger gym will certainly benefit competitions, but there's benefits for the elementary school as well. Whole group assemblies, um, indoor recesses, and is there a perfect size for that? No. Would 10,000 square feet been okay? There would have been some things that you could certainly do an assembly in a 10,000 square foot gym. So, but trying to make sure that we weren't too small. So we did have that make that decision last winter, maybe March meeting. I have to look back on my notes, but the idea was just kind of have as much flexibility as we have. A lot of our spaces get used twice. I think about the tennis courts. They're not just tennis courts. They're during the day for second graders, they're a basketball court or they're a four-square court. So trying to be resourceful with a limited amount of space, knowing that this is a one-time opportunity to do this, knowing that most schools our size would have 2 gyms where they could have competitions, whether you're doing JV competitions while the varsity, you might do JV girls and boys in one gym in the smaller gym and varsity girls and boys in the other, kind of overlapping, but not right now. You have to do those one after the other. And so lots of school districts that have 2 gyms, at least the ones I came from, we always had something set up where it just shortens up the evening a little bit, makes it easier for families and the workers and custodians and stuff like that, and gets people done early, and which does get brought up with Decorah competing as an independent now, trying to make sure that we get folks in town for basketball games and volleyball games. Gets a little trickier. Obviously, we're trying to work on that, but I know we're not going to have as many. We didn't have as many home volleyball games this year, and we're not going to have as many home basketball games as we've had in the past, which also is stressful on our system.
All right. Anything else you want to pass on to the public about the elementary school project as of this time that we haven't touched on?
I would just say a lot of questions can be answered if you go to our website. It does work better on your phone, or excuse me, it does work better on a laptop than on your phone, unfortunately. Um, but if you go there, there's an elementary updates that's got all the new drawings and the project plans, FAQ. Um, and then one of the options is Bond 2024. That's the link to the historic website that we had up and running during the bond last year at this time. So if people want to remember what was said or help remember, that information is all listed right there.
And I guess I'll ask you one final question. Throughout this bond process, from the time that you set the bond issue referendum till the bond getting passed through the planning process and where we're at today, do you feel the district has been as transparent as you possibly could?
Oh yeah, I feel we've done a really nice job with that. I had somebody ask me why we didn't put every drawing in the paper every time it changed, and that the part of this process is we had 4 meetings with staff, the users of the building, and the building did change. I don't want to say quite a bit, but we moved stuff around and we would, go in and say, okay, this is what we heard you say. Well, the architect would say, this is what we heard you say is your number one priority. And so we're going to move, what if we move you to this space and if you used it this way? So, yeah, I know, there's always, I guess I look at it as I follow other people's bond issues and what they have. And I know, I've seen other things that um, I people even going right now going for bond issues, and I'm very pleased with the information and the websites. And we did lots of mailers, and there's a lot of ways to get information. There still is a lot of ways to get information. Um, we would like to get. I would have loved to had drawings ready for the start of school just because of the excitement, but there was still stuff that was being fine tuned, and we did. Once we had the drawings we have out now, we have an idea what it's going to look like. Um, but one of the things was that wasn't the final drawings weren't ready, and you don't want to put something out that then changes, and if people only see one drawing, they think that that's what it is. I get back to people probably remember when one of the concept drawings made it to the paper and it looked like I've referred to it as the George Jetson School. But there was a drawing, it was some futuristic building, which was never even discussed as a school, but it was a concept drawing that was on a slideshow that got grabbed and put into the paper. And, I had to go to explain to people that's not a drawing. That's not something we're doing. We're going to try to just build the best school we can. So, so the hesitation you have when you're getting stuff out is you want to try to be as complete as possible, and so that somebody doesn't see it and say, well, where's the swimming pool, or where's the castle with the moat, or where's the helicopter pad? Not that those would ever be part of the drawings, but certainly the George Jetson School was probably a good example of some of the misinformation that got out. And you know, you typically, I'm not aware of any school that said, "Oh, we made a change today. Here's the plan," and we made another change, and here's the plan. There were lots of changes, small and big, that we did as we went through the process. But if you look at the footprint and the design of what was put out on the conceptual plan in 2024, we're not that far off at the end of the day. I mean, different sections got moved to different buildings, but we talked about a lot of the stuff that ended up being in the project, and board members kind of highlighted that last night as well.
All right, and I guess I'll ask you one final question, my third final question, if you if you'll allow. I know there's probably a temptation to do this as quickly as possible, but how important is it to do it as correctly as possible?
Well, yeah, you certainly don't want to rush in and uh, open a brand new school and then say, "Oh my gosh, um, why don't we have a fence around our playground?" and then hastily put up a fence. So I did have a conversation with Tori Watson, the elementary principal, and she just came from Waverly Shell Rock, where they built two new schools, and that was the things that they had to add right away were a fence around the playground and more parking. But we've thought about those things. But yeah, you absolutely will. You think of everything 100%? No, but you want to be thoughtful in the process. That's why you use folks. Our architects designed schools before. We have hired a construction manager at risk, and they're probably the second largest school construction company in the Midwest, Myron. So they've got a good idea. They've got lots of resources of what's working at schools they've designed or built, and what doesn't work. So yeah, you want to get it right. This is one of the last schools we'll build for, I don't know how many years in this community, but let's say 30 years. And we want to make sure that we do it right. We've waited a long time for a new John Klein. Um, will it be 100% what every person in town wants? No. But we're going to try to get it as close as possible. I just was talking to somebody the other day. There's probably about 5 or 6 things that aren't my favorite part of the design, but I know they're important to people, and there's a little bit of compromise that has to happen with all this.
Tim, we appreciate you taking the time and informing the public about what's going on regarding this project. Thanks for the time, as always.
You bet.
Tim Cronin, Decorah Schools Superintendent. Thank you to our guest on the program this morning, Brad Hurst, the high school principal at Decorah High School. Veterans Day program coming up on November 11th, and get your photos of your active duty military and veterans to be added to the Veterans Wall that will be displayed that day. Deadline to do so coming up October 31st. Get a hold of Denise Golrud down at Decorah High School. We also want to thank Tim Cronin, Decorah School Superintendent, for giving us the latest regarding the elementary school project. Don't forget, we put these shows on YouTube each and every week. We realize you got a lot of things going on. Don't always have time to be near the radio, the smart speaker, the streaming device, etc. at 9 o'clock on a Thursday morning, but we want to bring these conversations to you on your schedule. Go to 1023 Our Town program. That's one of the best ways you can do it if you're just gallivanting around on YouTube. We also put the links up on all of our LA Communications Facebook pages. Our job is to stay in touch with the community to the best of our ability. And why? Because without you folks, none of this would make sense. Our thanks to our sponsor, Decorah Bank and Trust. Thanks to our 2 guests on the program, and we thank you, that's right, you, for tuning in, for logging on, or for watching Our Town on 94.9 and 99.1 The River.